What if I told you that the only thing standing between you and the life you've always dreamed of is not lack of opportunity, not bad timing, and certainly not bad luck, but rather a version of yourself that you've been unconsciously choosing to be every single day? Think about that for a moment. How many times have you looked at someone living the abundant life you desire and wondered what they have that you don't? The truth might shock you. They don't have more than you. They simply became someone different. And here's the remarkable part, that transformation didn't take years, months, or even weeks. It took just 7 days of demanding a completely different standard from themselves. Has this ever happened to you? You wake up one morning filled with determination, ready to change everything, convinced that this time will be different. You can feel that fire burning inside your chest, that quiet voice whispering that you're capable of so much more than what you're currently experiencing. But then, as the day progresses, another voice creeps in, louder, more familiar, more convincing. It's the voice of doubt, reminding you of every time you tried and failed, every dream that didn't materialize, every promise you made to yourself that you couldn't keep. And before you know it, that initial fire dims to a flicker, and you find yourself back in the same patterns, the same routines, the same life. But before we begin, please hit the like button and let me know where in the world you're watching from today. It's always fascinating seeing who's joining us from around the world, and if you haven't already, make sure to hit that subscribe button and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any of our future videos. Now, what you're about to discover might surprise you, because we're not going to talk about working harder, sacrificing more, or following some complex system that requires months of dedication. Instead, we're diving into something far more powerful, something that operates beneath the surface of your conscious awareness, something that determines whether abundance flows toward you or away from you, regardless of how much effort you put in. Stay with me until the end, because this isn't just another motivational speech. This is about understanding the invisible mechanism that governs how money, opportunities, and success respond to your very existence. Here's what most people don't realize. There's a version of you that already exists, a version that doesn't chase abundance because abundance chases them. A version that doesn't worry about money because money naturally gravitates in their direction. A version that doesn't question their worth because their worth is so evident that the world has no choice but to recognize it. And the distance between the current you and that version isn't measured in years of hard work or lucky breaks. It's measured in identity. The question isn't whether you can become that person. The question is, are you willing to demand that transformation from yourself for just 7 days? Because something extraordinary happens when you stop negotiating with your potential and start commanding it. Something shifts in the invisible field around you, and suddenly the universe begins responding to a frequency it couldn't detect before. But here's where it gets interesting, and this is what separates those who temporarily feel motivated from those who permanently transform their reality. Throughout history, there have always been truths that circulated quietly among those who understood how the world really operates. Not secrets locked away in vaults, but insights so potent that they couldn't be shared openly because most people simply weren't ready to receive them. Think about it. When you hear stories of individuals who seem to effortlessly attract success, who build wealth in ways that appear almost magical, who make decisions that consistently lead to abundance, have you ever wondered what they know that you don't? It's not about insider information or privileged connections, though those can certainly help. It's about understanding a fundamental truth that changes everything. Money isn't just a physical object you chase. Money is responsive, it has behavior, and most importantly, it responds to who you are at your core. This might sound strange at first, but stay with me, because this is where the real transformation begins. Every single day you're broadcasting a signal into the world. Not through your words, not through your social media posts, not even through your actions, though those certainly matter. You're broadcasting through something far more fundamental, your energetic frequency. Now, before you think this is getting too abstract or metaphysical, let me ground this in something you can immediately recognize in your own experience. Have you ever walked into a room and instantly felt someone's presence before they even spoke? Have you ever met someone who just seemed to carry an aura of success, and you couldn't quite explain why, but you knew they were different? That's not mystical nonsense. That's the invisible field of energy that every human being emits, and it's constantly communicating who you are to the world around you. If this resonates with you, and you want to continue this journey of transformation, hit that subscribe button. I create content specifically designed to rewire your relationship with abundance, and there's so much more waiting for you here. Here's what changes everything. The universe operates like a mirror. Whatever you project internally gets reflected back to you externally. If you wake up every morning carrying the vibration of scarcity, of worry, of "I hope this works out," you're essentially telling the invisible forces around you that you're someone who lacks, someone who's uncertain, someone who's still waiting for permission to have more. And the mirror responds accordingly. Opportunities that could have come your way somehow go to someone else. Money that could have flowed toward you finds a different path. Not because you're unlucky, not because the world is against you, but because your internal frequency is broadcasting the wrong signal. Now, I want to go even deeper into this, because understanding the mechanism is one thing, but recognizing how it's been operating in your life without your awareness is what creates the breakthrough. Think back to moments when you actually felt abundant. Maybe it was after receiving unexpected money, or when you felt genuinely confident about your future, or during a period when everything seemed to flow effortlessly. In those moments, didn't opportunities seem to appear out of nowhere? Didn't people respond to you differently? That wasn't coincidence. That was your frequency aligning with abundance, and the universe reflecting that alignment back to you. The problem is that most people experience this accidentally, and briefly, then return to their default frequency of lack, wondering why that magical moment couldn't last. What separates those who consistently attract wealth from those who struggle isn't intelligence, education, or even hard work. Though all those matter, it's that they've learned to consciously maintain the frequency of abundance regardless of their external circumstances. They've discovered that identity precedes reality, not the other way around. They don't wait to feel wealthy until they have wealth. They embody the identity of someone for whom wealth is natural, and then wealth has no choice but to show up because the energetic match is perfect. This is the hidden truth that powerful individuals throughout history have understood and applied, often without even being able to articulate why it works. They just knew that when they showed up as a certain version of themselves, the world responded accordingly. And here's what makes this so transformative for you right now. You don't need to change your entire life to test this. You don't need to quit your job, move to a new city, or wait for the perfect circumstances. You can begin shifting your frequency immediately, starting with how you perceive yourself in this very moment. The question becomes, are you willing to demand from yourself a different standard of being, not for months or years, but for just 7 consecutive days? Because in that short window, something remarkable happens to your brain, to your energy, to the signal you're broadcasting. Write in the comments, "I'm ready to shift my frequency," because acknowledging this truth is the first step in activating it. Let me paint you a picture that will completely reframe how you see abundance. Imagine standing on the shore of a magnificent river. This river is unlike any you've ever seen. It's luminous, powerful, flowing endlessly in both directions. The water is clear and abundant, carrying with it everything you could possibly desire. Opportunities, wealth, connections, resources, possibilities. This river has no source you can point to and no destination where it ends. It simply is, always has been, always will be. It flows continuously, never diminishing, never running dry, regardless of how many people draw from it. This river is the abundance that exists in the universe. And here's what most people don't realize. You've been standing on its shore your entire life. But here's the fascinating part that changes everything. You've been watching this river flow past you, day after day, year after year, wondering why you can't seem to access it. You've seen others wade in effortlessly, filling their lives with what the river offers. And you've asked yourself, why not me? What do they have that I don't? What's the secret they discovered? And in asking those questions, you've been looking in the wrong direction. The river was never the problem. The river doesn't discriminate, doesn't choose favorites, doesn't require special credentials or perfect timing. The river simply flows, available to anyone willing to step into it. The real question has always been, who are you being when you approach the river? This is where the profound shift happens in understanding. You've been taught your entire life that abundance is something external to acquire, something to achieve through struggle and sacrifice, something you must earn through years of hard work and perfect strategy. That's the narrative we inherit from parents who inherited it from their parents, from teachers who learned it from a system designed around scarcity, from a culture that conditions us to believe that there's not enough to go around. But what if everything you've been taught about abundance is backwards? What if abundance isn't something you acquire at all, but something you remember? Think about this carefully, because it's a truth that reverberates through every spiritual tradition, every ancient wisdom system, every transformational teaching that has ever genuinely changed lives. You weren't born believing you were limited. Watch a young child who hasn't yet been conditioned by society's beliefs. They approach the world with complete openness, expecting good things, feeling deserving of joy and abundance without question. They don't wonder if they're worthy of love, attention, or happiness. They simply receive it as natural. That child knew something that most adults have forgotten. Abundance is your birthright, your natural state, your original frequency before the world taught you otherwise. What distanced you from abundance wasn't life circumstances, bad luck, or lack of opportunity. It was the steady accumulation of beliefs that contradicted your inherent connection to that infinite river. Every time someone told you money doesn't grow on trees, every time you heard that you have to struggle to succeed, every time you witnessed someone in your family stress over finances and internalized that as normal, you were being programmed away from your natural abundance frequency. These beliefs became the invisible barrier between you and the river that was always right there, always flowing, always available. Now here's what makes this understanding so powerful and immediately applicable to your life. If abundance is something you remember rather than acquire, then the entire game changes. You're not starting from zero, trying to build something from nothing. You're not inadequate or lacking in any fundamental way. You're simply disconnected from what was always yours, and reconnection doesn't require years of effort. It requires recognition. It requires you to see through the illusion of scarcity that was painted over your natural state of abundance. It requires you to remember who you were before the world convinced you that you were small, limited, and separate from the infinite flow of prosperity. The transformation that happens when you truly grasp this is immediate and visceral. Suddenly you're not begging the universe for abundance. You're not hoping and wishing and wondering if you'll finally get your turn. You're simply stepping back into alignment with what was always true about you. You're remembering your connection to that river, adjusting your identity to match the frequency of someone who belongs in that flow, who has every right to draw from it, who was designed to live abundantly. And when that internal shift occurs, everything external begins to rearrange itself to match, because the universe can only reflect back to you what you're broadcasting from within. Drop a comment below saying, "I remember my abundance," not as wishful thinking, but as a declaration of truth you're reclaiming. Now, let me reveal something that will fundamentally alter how you operate in the world. Your mind isn't just a thinking machine that processes information and makes decisions. Your mind functions as a magnetic field, constantly attracting experiences, people and circumstances that match its dominant frequency. This isn't poetic language or wishful metaphor. This is the actual mechanism through which your reality gets constructed, moment by moment, day by day. And here's what makes this both fascinating and immediately actionable. You can reprogram this magnetic field in a remarkably short period of time, transforming yourself from someone who chases opportunities into someone whom opportunities chase. Think about the people you know who seem to have an uncanny ability to land in the right place at the right time. They meet the perfect contact at a random event. They stumble upon opportunities that seem designed specifically for them. Money flows toward them with a naturalness that makes others wonder what they're doing differently. Here's what's actually happening behind the scenes. Their internal compass is calibrated to abundance. Their mind has become a magnet tuned to the frequency of prosperity, and the universe responds to that signal with mathematical precision. It's not that they're luckier or more deserving. They've simply aligned their internal state with the external reality they desire, and alignment always creates manifestation. But here's where most people get stuck, and this is crucial to understand. If you want to break free from patterns that have kept you circling the same results, they try to change their external circumstances while maintaining the same internal frequency. They work harder at the same job while still feeling undervalued. They search for new opportunities while carrying the energy of someone who never quite succeeds. They want more money while vibrating at the frequency of scarcity and fear. And the universe, being the perfect mirror that it is, continues reflecting back exactly what they're broadcasting. The hustle increases, the effort multiplies, but the fundamental results remain frustratingly similar because the magnet itself hasn't changed. If something shifted inside you while watching this, go ahead and hit that like button. It's a simple way to acknowledge to yourself that this time mattered, that you received something valuable here. What separates those who break through from those who remain trapped isn't effort or intelligence or even talent. It's the willingness to make an internal adjustment before demanding an external change. It's understanding that your mind must become the magnet first, and then everything you desire gets pulled into your orbit naturally, effortlessly, inevitably. This is the hidden truth behind every rags to riches story, every unexpected breakthrough, every moment when someone's life suddenly shifted from struggle to flow. They didn't just change their actions, they transformed their magnetic field. Let me be specific about what I mean, because this is where the real power lies. When your mind operates as a magnet calibrated to abundance, several things happen automatically without you having to force or manufacture them. You start noticing opportunities that were always there but previously invisible to you. You begin making decisions from a place of confidence rather than desperation, and those decisions naturally lead to better outcomes. People respond to you differently because they pick up on the frequency you're emitting, even if they can't consciously articulate what's changed. Resources start appearing exactly when you need them, not through miracles, but through the natural law of attraction that governs how energy moves in this universe. And here's what makes this so immediately relevant to your life right now. You don't need to understand all the quantum physics or metaphysical principles behind why this works. You just need to recognize that it does work, and you can verify it through your own experience. Look back at periods in your life when things flowed easily. What was your internal state during those times? Chances are You felt deserving, confident, open to receiving. You weren't desperately grasping or fearfully protecting. You were simply being the kind of person to whom good things naturally come. That's your mind functioning as a magnet calibrated to abundance. The challenge, and this is what the next 7 days are designed to address, is learning to maintain that calibration regardless of external circumstances. Because here's what typically happens. You experience a taste of abundance, things start flowing, and then the moment something goes wrong or doesn't work out as expected, you immediately recalibrate back to scarcity. Your magnetic field flips, and suddenly you're attracting struggle again. The pattern repeats endlessly until you learn to hold your frequency steady, to keep your internal compass pointing toward abundance, even when temporary circumstances suggest otherwise. This is precisely why certain individuals seem to have money chase them, while others, no matter how hard they work, can't seem to get ahead. Financially, it's not about worthiness or fairness, it's about magnetic alignment. Money, like everything else in this universe, is energy, and energy always flows toward matching frequencies. When you vibrate at the frequency of abundance, feeling deserving, expecting good things, maintaining confidence in your value, money has no choice but to move in your direction, because that's simply how energetic resonance functions. Leave a comment saying, "My mind is a magnet for abundance," and notice how even declaring this shifts something inside you. Here's something that might sting a little, but understanding it will set you free in ways you can't yet imagine. If money seems to avoid you, if opportunities consistently go to others, if abundance feels like something that exists for everyone except you, money isn't actually running from you. Money is running from the version of yourself that you've been unconsciously embodying, the identity you've been carrying around like an invisible badge that announces to the universe exactly who you believe you are. And here's the uncomfortable truth. The universe doesn't care about your dreams, your wishes, or your desperate desires. The universe responds exclusively to your identity, to the energetic signature of who you're actually being in each moment, not who you hope to become someday. This is why affirmations alone don't work for most people. This is why vision boards gather dust while life remains unchanged. This is why you can work yourself to exhaustion and still end up in the same financial position year after year. You're trying to attract abundance while broadcasting the frequency of someone who lacks it. You're declaring you want wealth while embodying the identity of someone who struggles with money. And the universe, being the exquisitely precise mirror that it is, reflects back your actual state, not your aspirational one. The gap between what you desire and what you're experiencing isn't about lack of effort, it's about identity misalignment. Now imagine for a moment that you could see yourself not in a regular mirror that shows your physical appearance, but in a vibrational mirror that reveals the energy you're actually emitting into the world. What would that reflection show? Would you see someone radiating confidence and expectation of good things, or would you see someone clouded by doubt, dimmed by past disappointments, distorted by fears you've carried for so long they feel like part of your personality? Most people, if they could see this vibrational reflection honestly, would be shocked at how weak and scattered their energy appears when they think about money and abundance. Not because they're broken or defective, but because they've been conditioned into an identity that fundamentally contradicts prosperity. But here's where this gets interesting, and where hope enters the picture in a real, actionable way. That vibrational reflection isn't fixed. It's not your destiny or your permanent state. It's simply the current output of the identity you've been running, the mental and emotional program that's been operating in the background of your consciousness. And just like any program, it can be rewritten. The beliefs that distorted your reflection weren't yours to begin with. They were inherited from parents who inherited them from their parents, absorbed from a culture steeped in scarcity thinking, reinforced by every experience that seemed to prove you weren't. Meant for abundance, but inherited beliefs can be examined, questioned, and ultimately replaced. What makes the next 7 days so powerful is that they're specifically designed to disrupt the old program and install a new one. Not through wishful thinking or temporary motivation, but through a systematic recalibration of your identity at the deepest level. 7 days might not seem like enough time to change patterns that have been running for years or even decades, but here's what science and human experience both confirm. Your brain is remarkably plastic. When you expose yourself to a new way of being consistently and intensely for even a short period, neural pathways begin rewiring. Your sense of self starts shifting. The vibration you emit begins changing. And as that internal shift occurs, the external world has no choice but to reorganize itself around your new frequency. Think about the spark that exists within that vibrational reflection, even if it's currently obscured by layers of limiting beliefs and past conditioning. That spark is your original nature, your inherent worthiness, your natural connection to abundance that was present before the world taught you otherwise. That spark never went away. It's been there all along, waiting for you to remove the barriers you've placed in front of it. The question isn't whether you have the capacity for abundance. The question is whether you're willing to become the version of yourself that money recognizes as a match, that opportunities naturally flow toward, that success finds effortless to support. And here's what changes when you make that identity shift. You stop chasing. You stop straining. You stop desperately trying to force outcomes. Instead, you start embodying the frequency of someone for whom abundance is natural, expected, and deserved. Your decisions come from a different place. Your actions carry a different energy. Your presence communicates something the universe responds to immediately. This isn't about becoming someone you're not. It's about removing the false layers that have been hiding who you actually are beneath all the programming. Type in the comments, "I see my true vibrational power," because acknowledgement is the first step toward transformation. The reason I'm asking you to commit to just 7 days isn't arbitrary, and it's not because 7 sounds mystical or significant. It's rooted in how your brain actually rewires itself and how the universe responds to sustained clarity. Your brain is an incredibly adaptive organ, constantly forming new neural pathways based on repeated patterns of thought and behavior. But here's the critical part that most people miss. Sporadic effort doesn't create lasting change. 1 day of thinking differently, followed by 6 days of reverting to old patterns, doesn't signal to your brain that a genuine transformation is occurring. Your brain interprets that as a temporary anomaly, an exception to your normal programming, and it quickly reverts to default settings because consistency is what it trusts as real. 7 consecutive days of elevated identity, however, creates something entirely different. When you sustain a new way of being for a full week without breaking the pattern, your brain begins recognizing this as your new normal. Neural pathways that support this identity start strengthening. Old pathways that supported your previous identity begin weakening. It's neuroplasticity in action, and while complete, rewiring takes longer. The foundation gets established remarkably quickly when the intensity and consistency are both present. This is why 7 days of absolute commitment creates more transformation than 7 months of half-hearted effort. Intensity multiplied by consistency equals identity shift. And it's not just your brain that requires this sustained clarity. The universe itself responds to signals that are clear and consistent. Think about radio frequencies for a moment. If a station keeps switching frequencies, your radio can't lock onto it. But when a frequency is steady and strong, your radio has no trouble tuning in and delivering clear sound. Your desires work the same way. When you're constantly oscillating between "I want abundance" and "I can't have abundance," between confidence and doubt, between action and retreat, the universe receives a scrambled signal. It doesn't know which frequency you're actually broadcasting because you keep changing channels. But when you hold a steady frequency for 7 consecutive days, maintaining the identity of someone who already embodies abundance, the universe locks onto that signal and begins organizing circumstances to match it. There's also something profound that happens at the level of your spirit, your deeper self that exists beyond thoughts and circumstances. Your spirit already knows abundance is your birthright. It already remembers what it felt like before limiting beliefs were installed. But that memory has been buried under years of conditioning, and it needs a wake-up call. 7 days of intense focus acts like an alarm clock for your spirit, reminding it of what it always knew but temporarily forgot. This isn't about creating something new. It's about remembering something ancient and true, about who you actually are. Now here's what makes these 7 days different from any self-improvement challenge you've tried before. You're not trying to change your physical circumstances during this time. You're not focused on making more money, landing a new job, or manifesting specific opportunities. Those things will come, but they're not the target of these 7 days. The target is singular and internal, elevating your mental standard. This means the quality of thoughts you accept, the internal dialogue you permit, the identity you hold, regardless of external evidence. When you elevate your mental standard, everything else naturally follows because your external reality has no choice but to conform to your internal state. Most people try to change their lives from the outside in. They think getting a better job will make them feel successful, or making more money will make them feel abundant, or achieving their goals will make them feel worthy. But it works the opposite way. When you feel successful internally, better opportunities appear. When you embody abundance mentally, money flows more freely. When you know your worth regardless of circumstances, the world treats you accordingly. Your life doesn't lead your mind leads your life. And when your mind aligns with abundance at the deepest level, your physical reality has no option but to reorganize itself to match that alignment. This is the hidden mechanism behind every dramatic life transformation you've ever witnessed. Comment below, "I elevate my mental standard now," and feel the shift that happens just from declaring it. There's a fundamental law operating in the universe that most people never recognize, and once you understand it, everything about manifestation and attraction suddenly makes perfect sense. The universe cannot tolerate a vacuum. Wherever there's empty space, wherever there's a void, the universe immediately moves to fill it with energy that matches the surrounding frequency. This isn't mystical thinking. It's observable physics applied to consciousness. And here's how it directly impacts your ability to attract abundance. When you vibrate from the place of already having, already being, already embodying what you desire, you create a vacuum around you that the universe must fill with corresponding experiences and opportunities. It's not optional. It's not dependent on whether you deserve it or have earned it. It's simply how energy functions. Think about what happens when someone walks into a room radiating absolute certainty. Not arrogance, not false confidence, but genuine inner knowing that they belong, that they're valuable, that good things come to them naturally. Even if you can't articulate why, you feel their presence differently. Opportunities seem to find them. People want to work with them, invest in them, open doors for them. What's actually happening is their frequency of certainty creates an energetic vacuum that pulls matching circumstances into their reality. They're not chasing or convincing or hustling desperately. They're simply being, and their being commands a response from the universe. This is why the phrase, "I already," M holds infinitely more power than I want to be. When you operate from I want, you're vibrating from lack. You're broadcasting that you don't currently have what you desire, and the universe, being the perfect mirror, keeps reflecting that state of not having back to you. You can want something for decades and never receive it because wanting is itself a frequency of absence. But when you shift to, I already am abundant, even if your bank account currently says otherwise, you're vibrating from presence, from fullness, from having. And the universe, unable to tolerate the vacuum between your frequency and your physical reality, begins moving mountains to bring your external circumstances into alignment with your internal state. Here's what trips most people up, and this is absolutely crucial to understand if you want these 7 days to actually transform your life. You cannot attract from a contradictory state. You cannot desire abundance while feeling poor and expect anything but more poverty. You cannot want success while vibrating failure and be surprised when success eludes you. You cannot seek prosperity while living in constant fear of loss and somehow manifest financial security. The universe doesn't respond to your wishes, your hopes, or your desperate prayers. It responds to your vibrational output, to the frequency you're actually emitting in this present moment. And that frequency is determined not by what you say you want, but by what you truly believe you. This is why so many people stay trapped in the same patterns year after year, despite genuinely wanting things to change. They're trying to attract wealth while carrying the identity of someone who struggles with money. They're seeking opportunities while embodying the energy of someone who never gets chosen. They're desiring transformation while maintaining the exact same thoughts, feelings, and behaviors that created their current reality. And then they wonder why affirmations don't work, why vision boards sit unchanged, why their circumstances remain stubbornly resistant to all their effort. The answer is simple but uncomfortable. They're attracting what they are, not what they want to be. The moment you grasp this distinction deeply, not just intellectually but in your bones, everything shifts. You stop focusing on changing circumstances and start focusing on changing your state. You stop asking the universe for abundance and start embodying abundance so completely that the universe has no choice but to match it. You stop wanting prosperity from a place of lack and start living from prosperity consciousness regardless of what your current bank balance shows. This isn't about pretending or faking or engaging in toxic positivity. This is about recognizing that your internal state creates your external reality, not the other way around, and making the conscious decision to shift your state first. Now let me go deeper into what this actually looks like in practice. Because understanding the principle is one thing, but applying it in your daily life is where the real magic happens. When you wake up tomorrow morning, the first thoughts that cross your mind set the frequency for your entire day. If those thoughts are worries about bills, anxieties about money, concerns about your future, you're immediately vibrating from scarcity, and your day will unfold to match that frequency. But if you can catch yourself, interrupt that pattern, and instead drop into the feeling of already having abundance, already being successful, already living the life you desire, you shift your frequency before your day even begins. And from that elevated state, you make different decisions, notice different opportunities, and take different actions that naturally lead to different results. Drop a comment saying, I attract what I am and I am abundant, because declaring your identity is how you lock it in. Let me give you a picture that perfectly captures what's been happening in your relationship with abundance. Imagine holding a small magnet in your hand. This magnet has been with you for years, exposed to the elements, knocked around by circumstances, gradually losing its magnetic properties. The metal is still there, the physical structure exists, but something invisible has changed. Its particles have become disorganized, scattered, pointing in random directions instead of aligned in unified force. When you hold this weakened magnet near metal objects, you might pick up a paperclip or two, maybe a small nail if you're lucky, but anything substantial just won't stick. The magnet isn't broken, it's just lost its internal alignment, and without that alignment, it can't generate the force needed to attract what it's designed to attract. This is precisely what happens to most people's ability to attract abundance. You weren't born with a weak magnet. You came into this world with powerful attractive force, naturally drawing what you needed, expressing desires without shame or doubt. But over time, through experiences that didn't go as planned, through messages that taught you to doubt yourself, through disappointments that made you question your worth, your internal particles became disorganized, your natural magnetic force scattered in 1,000 different directions. And now, even though you're trying to attract abundance, even though you're working hard and thinking positive and doing all the right things, you're only managing to pull in the occasional loose change of opportunity, small wins that don't quite change your life, temporary improvements that don't last, moments of hope followed by return to struggle. But here's what changes everything, and this is the transformation that happens during these 7 days. When you apply focused heat to a demagnetized piece of metal, something remarkable occurs at the molecular level. The particles begin vibrating with increased intensity. As they vibrate, they start seeking alignment with each other. Slowly, then suddenly, they organize themselves into the same direction, creating a unified magnetic field. The magnet didn't get bigger. No new metal was added. The physical structure remained identical. But internally, everything reorganized, and that internal reorganization transformed a powerless object into a force that can now attract with strength. This is the exact process you're undergoing right now, whether you fully realize it yet or not. The heat being applied is your focused intention over these 7 days. The vibration is the disruption of old patterns and the introduction of new identity. The alignment is what happens when your thoughts, emotions, and actions all start pointing in the same direction instead of contradicting each other. You're not becoming a different person. You're reorganizing the person you already are so that your natural magnetic force can express itself fully. And when that reorganization completes, when your internal particles all align toward abundance, you don't have to try hard to attract opportunities. They stick to you naturally because your magnetic field has become strong enough that resistance is impossible. Most people never experience this transformation because they're trying to change from the outside in. They're polishing the exterior of the magnet, making it look shinier, presenting it more professionally, working harder to press it against opportunities. But none of that addresses the fundamental issue, which is internal organization. You can't force a weak magnet to work through sheer effort. You have to realign its internal structure, and that's an invisible process that happens at a level most people never even think to examine. What makes these 7 days so powerful is that they're specifically designed to generate that internal heat, that reorganization, that alignment of your mental and emotional particles, so they all point toward the same truth. You are abundant. You are magnetic. You are designed to attract prosperity, not because you've earned it through suffering or proved yourself through struggle, but because abundance is simply the natural state that emerges when your internal structure is properly aligned. A properly magnetized piece of metal doesn't try to attract. It just does, automatically, inevitably, because that's what aligned magnetic force does. And here's what you'll start noticing as your internal reorganization progresses. Opportunities that you would have missed before suddenly become visible. Connections that seemed random start revealing themselves as perfectly orchestrated. Resources appear exactly when you need them, not through coincidence, but through the natural law of magnetic attraction operating at full strength. Your decisions become clearer because they're no longer filtered through scattered, disorganized thinking. Your actions carry more weight because they're backed by unified internal force. People respond to you differently because they unconsciously sense the strength of your magnetic field, even if they couldn't explain what they're picking up on. Leave a comment saying, "My internal structure is aligning now," and notice how even acknowledging this process accelerates it. I want to ask you something, and I need you to be brutally honest with yourself as you consider the answer. When was the last time you genuinely felt deserving of abundance? Not hoped for it, not wished for it, not even worked for it, but truly, deeply felt in your bones that you deserve wealth, stability, freedom, and yes, even luxury without guilt or justification. If you're struggling to remember such a moment, you're not alone. Most people haven't felt genuinely deserving in years, maybe decades, maybe ever. And this absence of feeling deserving is where scarcity actually begins, long before bank accounts empty or opportunities disappear. Scarcity starts the moment you internalize the belief that abundance isn't meant for you, that you're somehow unworthy of the good things you desire. Here's what happens when that belief takes root. You might still try to attract abundance. You might still set goals and make plans and take action. But underneath all that surface effort, there's a quiet voice whispering that you don't really deserve it, that good things happen to other people, that you'd better not get your hopes up because you'll probably just be disappointed again. And that whisper, barely audible to your conscious mind, broadcasts louder than any affirmation you could ever speak because it's tied to your core identity. It's the frequency you're actually operating from, regardless of what you're consciously trying to manifest. Think about the people you know who seem to effortlessly receive good things. They don't question whether they deserve a raise. They expect it. They don't feel guilty about spending money on themselves. They see it as natural. They don't apologize for their success. They own it completely. What's their secret? It's not that they're better than you or more talented or even more hardworking. It's that somewhere along the way, they maintained or reclaimed the sense of deserving that most people lose in childhood. Their internal compass kept pointing toward abundance as their natural destination, their rightful experience, their expected reality. Your mind is supposed to function like a compass that always points north, providing consistent direction regardless of where you are or what's happening around you. A reliable compass doesn't get confused by temporary circumstances or distracted by magnetic interference. It maintains its orientation, always showing you the way forward. In the same way, your mind should naturally orient toward abundance, toward opportunity, toward expansion. That's actually its default setting, the way you were designed to operate before the world got its hands on you. But over the years, your compass has been subjected to constant interference. Every time someone told you money doesn't grow on trees, that was magnetic interference. Every time you tried something and failed, and internalized that failure as evidence of your inadequacy, that was magnetic interference. Every time you compared yourself to others and found yourself lacking, every criticism you absorbed as truth about your worth, every fear you allowed to dictate your decisions, all of it created magnetic static that gradually disoriented your compass. And now, when you try to navigate toward abundance, your compass spins randomly, unable to find true north, leading you in circles while you wonder why you keep ending up in the same place. The tragedy is that your compass isn't broken. It's just overwhelmed by interference, by signals that contradict its natural orientation. Remove the interference, clear the static, and the compass immediately returns to pointing north because that's what it's designed to do. Your mind, freed from Limiting beliefs and fears and inherited scarcity programming naturally points toward abundance because that's your authentic state, your original frequency before it got distorted. This is what the next phase of these 7 days addresses directly. You're going to systematically identify and remove the interference that's been disorienting your compass. Not through complex therapy or years of processing, but through conscious recognition and intentional recalibration. Every time you catch yourself thinking you don't deserve good things, you're going to recognize that as interference and consciously redirect toward your natural state of worthiness. Every time doubt creeps in about whether abundance is possible for you, you're going to see that as magnetic static and choose to tune back into your authentic frequency. Every time fear tries to convince you to play small, you're going to identify that as external interference with your internal compass and reset to true north. What makes this so immediately powerful is that you don't have to create worthiness. You just have to stop contradicting it. You don't have to manufacture a compass that points toward abundance. You just have to remove what's been blocking its natural orientation. And when that happens, when your sense of deserving is restored and your compass realigns with its true north, the path forward becomes obvious. Opportunities become visible, and movement toward abundance becomes as natural as water, flowing downhill. Comment below, "I am worthy and my compass points north," because claiming your worthiness recalibrates everything. Here's the shift that will define whether these 7 days actually transform your life or just become another well-intentioned attempt that fades into the background. Your mind, right now, is taking orders from one of two sources. Either it's following your memories, constantly referencing past experiences to predict future outcomes, or it's following your vision, the clear picture of who you're becoming and what you're creating. And here's the uncomfortable reality. Most people's minds are completely enslaved to their memories. Every time an opportunity appears, their mind immediately scans the past for similar situations and how those turned out. And if the past contains failure or disappointment, the mind concludes that this new opportunity will probably end the same way. That's not wisdom or discernment. That's memory prison. Your memories are fantastic at sustaining your current reality because that's literally what they do. They reinforce patterns, confirm existing beliefs, and keep you operating within the boundaries of what you've already experienced. If your past contains scarcity, your memory-driven mind will ensure your future does too, because it's simply executing its primary function, maintaining consistency with your historical identity. But your vision operates on an entirely different principle. Your vision doesn't care what happened before. Your vision is pulling you toward what's possible, toward the version of yourself that exists beyond your current limitations, toward the abundance that awaits when you stop letting yesterday dictate tomorrow. During these 7 days, you're going to consciously redirect your mind's loyalty from memory to vision. Every single time your mind tries to reference the past to predict the future, you're going to interrupt that pattern and intentionally connect with your vision instead. When doubt arises because you've failed before, you're going to acknowledge that memory and then deliberately choose to follow your vision of success. When fear appears because you've been hurt previously, you're going to honor that experience without letting it control your next move. This isn't about denying your past or pretending it didn't happen. This is about refusing to let your history have more authority over your future than your conscious intention does. Now let me show you something that exists within you right now, something that's been there all along, but perhaps you've never been taught to recognize or cultivate. Imagine you're walking down a narrow path, and in the distance, you see a flame. As you get closer, you notice this fire has a peculiar quality. Wind doesn't diminish it, rain doesn't extinguish it, and no matter how long it's been burning, it never runs out of fuel. This fire represents your internal power, the natural force within you that was designed to expand, create, and attract abundance. It's not something you need to acquire or develop from scratch. It's something you were born with, a fundamental part of your human design that exists in every person who's ever lived. But here's what happened to that fire for most people. From the time you were young, messages started coming at you, direct and subtle, intentional and accidental, that taught you to make your fire smaller. Don't be too confident. Don't aim too high. Don't expect too much. Don't be selfish. Don't stand out too much. Be realistic. Be humble. Be careful. And slowly, gradually, often without conscious awareness, you learn to dampen your internal fire, to keep it contained, to make it small enough that it wouldn't threaten others or draw criticism or lead to disappointment if things didn't work out. You didn't extinguish the fire completely. That's actually impossible because it's part of your essential nature. But you did reduce it to barely more than an ember, enough to survive, but not nearly enough to thrive. What almost nobody tells you is that this internal fire, this natural impulse toward expansion and abundance, isn't something selfish or dangerous that needs to be controlled. It's actually your life force expressing itself, your spirit seeking its natural state of growth and flourishing. Every person who's ever achieved remarkable success, created significant wealth, or lived a truly abundant life did so by allowing their internal fire to burn at full strength. They didn't dim it to make others comfortable. They didn't contain it out of fear. They fed it, protected it, let it grow until it became powerful enough to fuel not just their own transformation, but often the transformation of everyone around them. These 7 days are about giving yourself permission to let that fire grow again, to stop apologizing for wanting more, to stop making yourself small to fit into other people's limited vision of what's possible for you. Your internal power isn't waiting to be created, it's waiting to be unleashed. Write in the comments, "My fire burns bright," and feel what happens inside you when you claim that truth. Let me ask you something that might make you uncomfortable at first, but stay with me because there's profound liberation waiting on the other side of this question. When was the last time you allowed yourself to truly want more? More money, more freedom, more opportunities, more personal and power, without immediately feeling a wave of guilt wash over you? Most people can't remember such a time because guilt has become so intertwined with ambition that they can't separate the two. They've been conditioned to believe that wanting more is somehow greedy, that desiring wealth is spiritually shallow, that seeking personal power is selfish, that demanding better for yourself means you're ungrateful for what you have. And so they walk through life with their desires on a leash, never allowing themselves to fully want what they actually want, because guilt keeps pulling them back to acceptable levels of ambition. This guilt is an invisible chain, and it's extraordinarily effective at keeping people trapped in limitation. Not because they lack the ability to create abundance, not because opportunities aren't available, not even because they don't work hard enough, but simply because they've been programmed to feel wrong for wanting more than they currently have. Think about the language we use around desire. We call people who want a lot greedy or materialistic. We praise those who are content with less as humble and grounded. We create entire philosophies around why wanting less is more virtuous than wanting more. And all of this programming serves one purpose: to keep you small, to keep you contained, to keep you from claiming the abundance that's actually your birthright. But here's the truth that guilt doesn't want you to discover. There's nothing noble about playing small. There's nothing virtuous about denying your desires. There's nothing spiritually evolved about limiting yourself to make others comfortable with their own limitations. The universe is abundant beyond measure, and your wanting more doesn't take away from anyone else. In fact, when you step fully into your abundance, you become a living example that gives others permission to do the same. You create opportunities for people around you, You generate resources that can flow to others. You become a force of expansion rather than contraction. But none of that happens as long as guilt keeps you chained to acceptable levels of success. Now picture this with me, because this image perfectly captures the relationship most people have with abundance. There's a river, massive and magnificent, flowing with constant force. This river carries everything you could possibly need or want: resources, opportunities, connections, wealth, possibilities beyond what you can currently imagine. And this river never stops flowing. It doesn't run dry during economic downturns. It doesn't pause while you figure things out. It doesn't wait for you to feel ready. It flows constantly, endlessly, powerfully, indifferent to whether you engage with it or not, because that's simply its nature. Abundance doesn't start and stop based on your participation. It exists as a permanent feature of the universe, available always. But here's what I want you to really examine in your own life. Where are you standing in relation to this river? Are you in it, fully immersed, allowing its flow to carry you toward everything you desire? Or are you standing on the shore, watching it flow past, admiring it from a distance, but never actually stepping in? And if you're on the shore, what's keeping you there? Is it fear of the current, worry that you'll be overwhelmed, concern that you don't know how to navigate abundant waters because you've only ever known the shallow pools of scarcity? Or is it something even more subtle? The belief that you're supposed to stay on shore, that getting wet is for other people, that you should be grateful just to watch the river flow, even if you never personally benefit from it. Most people spend their entire lives standing at the edge, one foot tentatively in the water, the other firmly planted on safe ground, never fully committing to the flow because they're terrified of what might happen if they let go of the shore. They want abundance. They desire transformation. They dream of a life where resources flow freely. But they want all of that while maintaining complete control, while staying safe, while keeping one foot on familiar ground. And the river, being what it is, can't fully carry someone who refuses to get wet. It flows around them, past them, always available, but never fully accessed because they won't take the step that abundance requires: full immersion, complete trust, total commitment to the flow. These 7 days are your invitation to finally step into the river, to let go of the shore, to allow yourself to be carried by abundance instead of watching it pass by. Not recklessly, not foolishly, but with the understanding that you were designed to swim in these waters, that your natural state is flowing with abundance, not observing it from the sidelines. Comment below, "I step into the river now," and notice the shift that happens when you make that declaration. Before we go any further, I need to address something you might be feeling right now. As you've been listening to these truths, as you've been contemplating stepping into the river, as you've been imagining your internal fire growing stronger, there's a good chance you're also experiencing resistance. Maybe it feels like a tightness in your chest or a voice in your head questioning whether this is all real, or a subtle anxiety about what might change if you actually committed to this transformation. And if you're feeling any of that, I want you to understand something crucial. Resistance isn't a sign that you're doing something wrong. Resistance is absolute proof that you're doing something right. Here's what resistance actually means. It means your old identity recognizes that its days are numbered. It means the beliefs that have kept you playing small are sensing their power slipping away. It means the invisible walls that have contained your potential for years are beginning to crack. Your old self doesn't go quietly. It fights to maintain its position because that's what established patterns do when they're threatened with obsolescence. But that fight, that resistance you're feeling, isn't a reason to stop. It's confirmation that real change is occurring at depths that matter. Think about what happens when you start exercising after years of inactivity. Your muscles resist. They're sore, uncomfortable, protesting the new demands you're placing on them. But that discomfort isn't damage. It's adaptation. It's your body reorganizing itself to become stronger. The resistance you feel isn't your enemy trying to keep you down. It's the friction of transformation, the inevitable discomfort that comes when old structures make way for new ones. And just like with physical training, the resistance lessens as your new state becomes your normal state. The key is not to interpret resistance as a stop sign, but to recognize it as a mile marker showing you're on the right path. What separates people who transform from people who stay stuck isn't the absence of resistance. Everyone feels resistance when they attempt real change. The difference is in how they interpret it. Those who stay stuck take resistance as evidence that they should turn back, that maybe this isn't for them, that perhaps they should settle for what they already know. Those who transform recognize resistance as the sound of old chains breaking, and they push forward with even more determination because they know they're close to a breakthrough. You're feeling resistance right now because parts of you that have been dormant for years are waking up, and old belief systems that have run your life are being challenged. That's not a problem. That's progress. Now I want you to do something with me. And I need you to really feel this, not just think it. Place your hand on your chest if you can, and as you do, say these words either out loud or powerfully in your mind. I permit myself to receive more than I ever imagined. Don't rush past that. Let those words settle into your chest, into your heart, into the core of who you are. Notice what happens in your body when you make that declaration. Does something soften? Does something expand? Does something that's been clenched for years finally begin to release? This permission is the key that unlocks everything we've been talking about. You can desire abundance all you want. You can visualize it and affirm it and work toward it. But if you haven't given yourself permission to actually receive it, all that effort hits an invisible ceiling. It's like trying to pour water into a bottle with the cap still on. The water is there, the bottle is ready, but the opening isn't available. Permission removes the cap. Permission creates the opening. Permission signals to the universe that you're finally ready to receive what's been waiting for you all along. And here's what most people don't understand about abundance. It doesn't arrive because you desire it intensely enough. It doesn't appear because you've worked hard enough to earn it. It doesn't manifest because you've mastered the perfect technique. Abundance arrives the moment you permit it, the moment you create internal space for it to land, the moment you stop blocking its natural flow with unworthiness or guilt or the belief that you should settle for less. You've been standing in your own way, not because you're broken or inadequate, but simply because you never gave yourself permission to have what you actually want. That changes now. That changes with this declaration. That changes as you feel these words vibrating in your chest as a truth that was always yours, but you finally claimed it. Drop a comment saying, "I give myself full permission," and feel the power of claiming your right to abundance. Now let me reveal something operating beneath your conscious awareness that's been controlling your financial reality more powerfully than any budget, any job, any opportunity ever could. Within you exists what I call your financial identity mold. It's an invisible pattern, a set of unconscious parameters that determines exactly how much wealth you allow into your life, how much stability you can tolerate before you start self-sabotaging, and how much expansion feels normal to you versus threatening. This mold wasn't created yesterday or last month. It's been forming since childhood, shaped by thousands of small moments, watching how your parents handled money, absorbing messages about wealth from your environment, internalizing beliefs about what people like you are capable of achieving, processing every financial disappointment or success through the lens of identity. What makes this mold so powerful and so invisible is that it operates automatically below the level of conscious choice. You don't wake up and decide to limit your income to a certain amount. You don't consciously choose to repel opportunities that exceed your comfort zone. You don't deliberately sabotage yourself when things start going too well. But the mold does all of this for you, maintaining your financial reality within the boundaries it considers safe and normal based on the identity programming it received over years and decades. And here's the fascinating and frustrating part. This mold is so effective that even when money exceeds its limits, mechanisms kick in to bring you back down to the programmed level. You get a windfall and immediately have an unexpected expense. You land a higher-paying job, and mysteriously your spending increases to match. You start building savings and then make an impulsive decision that depletes it. The mold always wins unless you consciously reprogram it. This is why working harder alone never creates lasting abundance. You can double your hours, triple your effort, hustle until you're exhausted, but if your internal financial mold says you're a person who makes $50,000 a year, you'll find ways to stay around that. No matter how hard you work, the mold will either limit the opportunities you notice, or it'll create circumstances that drain away any excess, or it'll make you so uncomfortable with having more that you unconsciously return to familiar levels. It's not a conscious conspiracy against yourself. It's simply your identity enforcing its view of what's normal for someone like you. And this brings us to the principle that changes everything once you truly internalize it. Your life doesn't create your identity. Your identity creates your life. Most people have this backwards. They think if they could just get the better job, then they'd feel successful. If they could just make more money, then they'd feel abundant. If they could just achieve their goals, then they'd feel worthy. So they focus all their energy on trying to change external circumstances while their identity remains exactly the same. And they wonder why their results stay frustratingly consistent despite all their efforts. But here's how it actually works, and this is the mechanism that everyone who has ever achieved lasting abundance has discovered either consciously or intuitively. Your identity, your deep sense of who you are and what's normal for you, broadcasts a signal. That signal attracts circumstances, opportunities, and results that match it. Change the signal, and you change what gets attracted. Maintain the same signal while trying to force different results, and you'll experience constant struggle as your external efforts fight against your internal identity. The universe always resolves this conflict in favor of identity because identity is the stronger force. It's the foundation. It's the mold that shapes everything else. This means you can work more hours, but if your identity says you're someone who struggles financially, struggle is what you'll experience regardless of effort. You can implement perfect money management strategies, but if your identity includes the belief that you can't maintain wealth, you'll find ways to lose what you gain. You can pursue opportunity after opportunity, but if your identity whispers that success isn't for people like you, those opportunities will somehow slip through your fingers. Not because you're unlucky or inadequate, but because your external actions are fighting a losing battle against your internal identity. And identity always wins in the end. The transformation that's happening during these 7 days isn't about learning new success strategies or discovering secret techniques. It's about fundamentally altering your identity so that abundance becomes normal for you, so that receiving wealth feels natural rather than suspicious, so that expansion is expected rather than shocking. When your identity shifts, everything shifts. Opportunities you couldn't see before become obvious. Resources that seemed unavailable suddenly appear. Decisions that used to terrify you become straightforward. And money, instead of constantly leaving as fast as it arrives, begins to accumulate and multiply because your new identity has room for it. expects it, knows how to maintain it. Leave a comment saying, "My identity creates my abundance." And recognize that claiming this truth is where real power lives. There's a pattern playing out in millions of lives that's heartbreaking because it's so unnecessary, and yet most people never recognize it's happening. You'll see someone working incredibly hard, genuinely trying to improve their circumstances, making what look like all the right moves, and yet year after year, their economic reality remains essentially unchanged. They're trapped at the same income level, facing the same struggles, experiencing the same limitations. And when you ask them why, they'll point to external factors: the economy, their industry, their location, their lack of connections, bad timing, unfortunate circumstances. And while those factors might play some role, they're not the real reason. The real reason, the one operating beneath all those surface explanations, is that they never updated their internal identity. They're still operating as someone who struggles, someone who has to fight for everything, someone for whom abundance is always just out of reach. And as long as that identity remains active, the struggle continues regardless of external changes. This is the sabotage pattern, and it's remarkably consistent once you know what to look for. Someone gets a promotion or a raise, and within months their expenses mysteriously increase to consume the extra income. Someone builds up savings, and suddenly their car breaks down or an unexpected bill appears. Someone starts a business that shows promise, and they make decisions that undermine its growth just as it's about to break through. From the outside, it looks like bad luck or unfortunate timing. From the inside, it's identity enforcement. The subconscious mind, loyal to its programming, creates circumstances that keep reality aligned with identity, because consistency is what it values above all else. It would rather maintain a consistent struggle than risk the discomfort of unfamiliar abundance. What makes this particularly insidious is that the person experiencing it genuinely can't see the pattern. They experience each setback as something happening to them rather than something they're unconsciously orchestrating to stay within their identity's comfort zone. They feel victimized by circumstances when they're actually being protected by their identity from the terrifying prospect of becoming someone new. Because that's what real abundance would require: becoming a different person, operating with a different set of assumptions, inhabiting a reality that doesn't match anything they've known before. And for most people, that unknown is more frightening than the familiar struggle, so the sabotage pattern continues, keeping them safe in their discomfort. But right now, in this moment, something different is available to you. Close your eyes for just a second if you can, or if you're driving or otherwise occupied, just imagine this vividly. Picture that vibrational mirror we talked about earlier, the one that shows not your face, but your energetic signature. As you stand before it, watching your current reflection with all its distortions and dimness and limitations, something begins to happen. The mirror itself starts to glow. At first, it's subtle, barely noticeable, but then it intensifies. Golden light, warm and powerful and alive, begins emanating from the mirror's depths. This isn't harsh or blinding, it's welcoming, inviting, transformative. And as this golden light grows stronger, it starts washing over your reflection, illuminating parts of you that have been in shadow for years. This golden light represents your new identity, the version of yourself that's been waiting beneath all the programming and conditioning and fear. As the light touches your reflection, you can see it transforming. The slouch of unworthiness straightens into posture of confidence. The face of doubt clears into expression of certainty. The energy of scarcity dissolves into vibration of abundance. This isn't becoming someone fake or putting on a mask. This is revealing who you actually are when all the false layers are burned away by truth. And as you watch this transformation occurring in the mirror, you hear words forming, not from outside, but from within. Yes, I deserve more. I'm ready to receive. I allow abundance to flow to me naturally. I am worthy simply because I exist. Feel those words resonating in your chest. Notice how they're not trying to convince you of something foreign. They're awakening something that's been dormant, remembering something you knew before the world taught you limitation. This golden light isn't adding anything to you. It's revealing what was always there, burning away the false beliefs that covered your true nature. And as this happens in your imagination, it's simultaneously happening in your actual energetic field, because your subconscious doesn't distinguish between vividly imagined experience and physical reality. The neural pathways are forming. The identity is shifting. The transformation is occurring at levels deeper than conscious thought. Comment: the golden light reveals my truth. And recognize that claiming this accelerates your transformation. Now I need you to be courageously honest with yourself. For a moment, I'm going to ask you a question, and I don't want you to rush to answer it defensively or dismiss it quickly. Just sit with it and see what emerges. Have you been sabotaging yourself without realizing it? Not occasionally, not in small ways, but systematically, consistently, in patterns you've been blind to because they've become so normalized in your life. I'm not asking this to make you feel bad or to heap blame on yourself. Blame serves no purpose here. I'm asking because awareness is the doorway to freedom, and you can't change what you can't see. Once you truly recognize a pattern, once you shine light on a mechanism that's been operating in darkness, you can't unknow it. And that inability to return to unconscious operation is exactly where transformation becomes inevitable. Think back over the last few years of your life and look for the pattern. How many times did you get close to a breakthrough only to make a decision that pulled you back? How many opportunities appeared that you talked yourself out of pursuing? How many moments of potential expansion did you contract from because something felt uncomfortable or unfamiliar? How many times did you almost ask for what you wanted but settled for less because asking felt too bold? These weren't accidents. These weren't external circumstances conspiring against you. These were your identity protecting itself from the threat of change, from the danger of becoming someone new, from the terrifying possibility that you might actually get what you claim to want. The sabotage shows up in countless ways, most of them subtle enough that you don't recognize them as self-sabotage at all. You procrastinate on the important thing while staying busy with urgent but less impactful tasks. You make yourself available to everyone else's needs while neglecting your own advancement. You invest time and energy into ventures that feel safe but have limited upside, while avoiding risks that could genuinely change your trajectory. You surround yourself with people who reinforce your current identity rather than challenging you to grow. You consume content that validates where you are rather than content that expands where you could go. Each individual choice seems reasonable, even responsible, but accumulated over time, they create a fortress that keeps you exactly where you've always been. Seeing this pattern isn't about self-punishment, it's about liberation. Because once you recognize that you've been the primary architect of your limitations, you simultaneously recognize that you have the power to redesign everything. If your choices created your current reality, different choices can create a different reality. If your identity has been enforcing limitation, a new identity can enforce expansion. The power was always yours. You just didn't know you were using it against yourself. And this brings us to something that completely shifts how you approach these next 7 days. Wealth, real lasting wealth that doesn't just appear temporarily and then vanish, doesn't arrive because you desire it strongly enough. Billions of people desire wealth. Desire is common, abundant everywhere. What's rare is becoming the kind of person that wealth, opportunities, and success cannot ignore. Think about the people you know who seem to attract abundance effortlessly. What is it about them? It's not that they're smarter than everyone else, though they might be intelligent. It's not that they work harder, though they might be diligent. It's that they carry themselves with an energy, a presence, a certainty that commands attention and respect from the universe itself. These 7 days aren't about casually deciding to think more positively or half-heartedly attempting some new habits. These 7 days are about treating yourself with a level of demand, a standard of excellence, a requirement for showing up as your highest self that most people don't have the courage to sustain even for a day, let alone a week. Most people negotiate with themselves constantly. They set a standard and then immediately create exceptions. They make commitments and then find reasons why circumstances justify breaking them. They declare intentions and then allow their emotions or convenience or other people's expectations to override those intentions. And that negotiation, that flexibility with your own standards, that willingness to let yourself off the hook is precisely what keeps you in the same patterns year after year. But when you demand from yourself something extraordinary, when you refuse to negotiate, when you maintain a standard that feels almost uncomfortable in its rigor, something remarkable happens. You become impossible to ignore, not just to other people, though they will notice the shift in your energy, but to the universe itself. Forces that were previously unavailable suddenly become accessible. Opportunities that were invisible suddenly become obvious. Resources that seemed scarce suddenly appear abundant, not because the external world changed, but because you became someone operating at a frequency that attracts different circumstances. Write in the comments, "I become impossible to ignore," and feel how even saying it shifts your energy. Let me be very clear about what these 7 days actually require, because there's a critical distinction that determines whether this becomes a life-changing experience or just another failed attempt. When I talk about demanding more from yourself, I'm not suggesting you work yourself into exhaustion or sacrifice sleep or push yourself to physical breaking point. That kind of unsustainable intensity creates burnout, not transformation. What I'm talking about is something entirely different. 7 days of surgical focus, where every thought, every decision, every moment of your attention is consciously directed toward your new identity. It's not about doing more things. It's about being more intentional with everything you already do. Think about it this way. Most people live their lives on autopilot, reacting to circumstances, making decisions from habit, thinking thoughts they've thought 1,000 times before, following patterns so ingrained they don't even recognize them as choices anymore. Years pass like this, sometimes decades. And while they might work hard during that time, while they might stay busy and productive, nothing fundamentally changes because they're operating from the same identity, the same assumptions, the same unconscious programming. The effort is there, but it's diffused, scattered across activities that maintain their current reality rather than concentrated on transformation. These 7 days are about breaking that inertia, that momentum of sameness that's been carrying you forward in the same direction for years. And the beautiful thing about focused intensity is that it works exponentially, not linearly. 7 days of absolute focus where you catch every thought that contradicts abundance, where you question every decision through the lens of your new identity, where you refuse to slip back into old patterns even for a moment. Those 7 days create more transformation than 7 months of casual effort because you're creating sustained pressure that forces your brain to reorganize itself. Your neural pathways don't have time to settle back into old grooves. Your identity doesn't get the chance to reassert its familiar patterns. You're essentially not giving your old self the opportunity to recover control. When was the last time you demanded so much from yourself that your mind actually had to reconfigure itself to keep up with what you were asking of it? Most people never push themselves to that point. They hover right at the edge of their comfort zone, occasionally peaking beyond it, but always retreating when things feel too unfamiliar. But transformation doesn't happen at the edge of comfort. It happens when you leap so far past that edge that your mind has no choice but to build new capacity to support where you've decided to go. Now let me tell you about the single most powerful signal you can send to the universe about who you're becoming. Stop waiting for permission. Stop waiting for the right moment, the perfect circumstances, the motivation to strike, the external validation, the sign that says it's okay to move forward. Every time you wait for external permission, you're reinforcing the identity of someone who needs approval, who doubts their own authority, who believes someone or something outside themselves knows better than they do about their own life. And the universe, reading that signal, treats you accordingly, as someone who's waiting, someone who's not quite ready, someone who can be overlooked. But when you act without permission, when you make moves because you decided they align with your vision regardless of whether circumstances seem perfect, when you claim opportunities without asking if you're qualified enough, when you invest in yourself without waiting for someone else to validate the decision, you broadcast an entirely different frequency. You're telling the universe, I am the authority in my life. I don't need external validation to know what's right for me. I trust my own vision enough to act on it before all the evidence is in. And the universe, which fundamentally respects boldness and certainty, responds to that frequency by opening pathways that simply don't exist for those who wait for permission. This doesn't mean acting recklessly or ignoring wisdom or charging forward without any thought. It means recognizing that you've been waiting for a permission that will never come, because no one else can grant you authority over your own transformation. You have to claim it. You have to act as though you already have it. You have to demonstrate through your choices that you're someone who moves forward with conviction, who pushes their own limits, not because they're comfortable, but because growth matters more than comfort, who demands from themselves a standard that most people would consider too intense to maintain. Leave a comment saying, I act with my own authority, because claiming this truth activates it in your life immediately. What I'm about to explain to you is the invisible operating system running your entire life, and most people go to their graves never realizing it exists, let alone learning how to reprogram it. Your brain has something I call your operational identity, and it functions exactly like the operating system on a computer. Just as your computer's operating system determines which programs can run, how much processing power is available, and what operations are possible, your operational identity determines what you believe you're capable of achieving, how much wealth you believe you can handle, which opportunities you even notice exist, and which decisions you consider within your range of possibility. This operational identity isn't something you consciously chose. It was installed gradually, starting from childhood, through thousands of interactions and experiences that shaped what you came to believe about yourself and your place in the world. Every time you attempted something and failed, that data got entered into the system. Every time someone told you what you could or couldn't do, that became part of the code. Every time you compared yourself to others and drew conclusions about your abilities, those conclusions became operating parameters. And now, years or decades later, this system runs constantly in the background, filtering your perception of reality, limiting or expanding what appears possible to you, determining which opportunities even register on your radar and which ones you literally can't see because they exist outside your operational identity's parameters. Here's what makes this so powerful to understand. When you try to pursue Something that contradicts your operational identity, the system creates resistance. It's not trying to sabotage you maliciously. It's trying to maintain consistency, to keep you operating within known parameters, to protect you from the discomfort of becoming someone unfamiliar. So if your operational identity includes the belief that you're someone who makes a certain amount of money and no more, attempts to exceed that level will trigger internal resistance, doubt, fear, imposter syndrome, sudden lack of motivation, mysterious obstacles that appear from nowhere. The system is defending its programming. But here's the transformative truth that changes everything. This operational identity, as powerful as it is, can be rewritten. Not through wishful thinking or positive affirmations alone, though those can support the process. Identity changes through demand. Your brain only upgrades its operating system when you push it to a point where the old system can't support what you're requiring of yourself. Think about how computers work. You can't just politely ask your computer to run faster or handle more complex programs. The operating system won't magically upgrade because you want it to. But when you install demanding software that requires more capacity than the current system can provide, you're forced to upgrade the operating system or the program simply won't run. Your brain works similarly. When you demand from yourself 7 days of uncommon discipline, 7 days of maintaining a completely different standard, 7 days of thinking, deciding, and acting from a new identity, without slipping back into old patterns even once, you create pressure that forces your brain to adapt. The old operational identity can't support the demands you're placing on the system, so the brain has no choice but to begin rewriting the code, upgrading the operating system, expanding the parameters of what's considered normal and possible. This isn't comfortable. Your brain will resist because change requires energy and creates uncertainty. But if you maintain the demand consistently, if you refuse to back down or negotiate or give your old identity an opening to reassert itself, the brain eventually accepts the new programming because its primary job is to support whatever you consistently demonstrate you are, not what you used to be. This is why these 7 days aren't a casual experiment. They're a forced upgrade of your internal operating system. Every time you catch yourself thinking a thought that contradicts your new identity and consciously replace it, you're rewriting code. Every time you make a decision from your future self rather than your past self, you're installing new programming. Every time you maintain your standard despite discomfort or doubt or old patterns trying to pull you back, you're demonstrating to your brain that the old operating system is obsolete and the upgrade is non-negotiable. And here's what happens when your brain finally accepts this new programming. What used to require enormous effort becomes automatic. Opportunities that were invisible suddenly become obvious. Decisions that felt impossible become straightforward. Your capacity expands to match the demands you've been placing on yourself because your operational identity has been upgraded to support this new level of functioning. Comment below, "I'm upgrading my operating system," and recognize that declaring this accelerates the process. There's a moment in every transformation where something shifts from struggle to flow, from effort to magnetism, from hoping to commanding. And that moment arrives precisely when your discipline becomes stronger than your doubt. Not when doubt disappears, it rarely does completely, but when your commitment to your new identity becomes so unwavering that doubt's voice loses its power to control your actions. This is when you become magnetic in a way that changes everything about how reality responds to you. Think about doubt for a moment. Doubt isn't inherently your enemy. It's simply your old identity trying to protect you from the unknown, warning you that you're moving into territory it doesn't recognize as safe. But when doubt runs the show, when it gets to determine which actions you take and which you avoid, when it has veto power over your decisions, it keeps you trapped in the known, the familiar, the already experienced. Discipline, on the other hand, is your conscious will overriding automatic patterns, choosing deliberate action over comfortable inaction, maintaining standards even when emotions suggest you should lower them. When your discipline surpasses your doubt, when you act regardless of what doubt whispers, when you maintain your standard despite fear's protests, when you stay the course even when your old identity screams that you should retreat, you send a message so powerful that your entire nervous system has to reorganize around it. For 7 consecutive days, you're essentially telling your mind something it's probably never heard with such force and consistency. Step aside. I'm taking control now. Not in an aggressive or harsh way, but with the kind of firm authority that leaves no room for negotiation. Your old identity, your habitual patterns, your conditioned responses, they've been driving for years, maybe your entire life, and now you're asking them to move to the passenger seat. They won't go quietly. They'll protest, create discomfort, manufacture reasons why you should give them back control. But when you maintain your position, when you refuse to surrender authority back to outdated programming, something extraordinary begins to happen in the invisible realm where cause becomes effect. The universe, which has been responding to your old frequency all this time, suddenly detects a new signal. It's as if you've tuned to a completely different radio station, and now different content starts coming through. Ideas that weren't accessible before drop into your mind seemingly from nowhere. Paths forward that were invisible suddenly become obvious. People who have something you need appear in your life through circumstances that seem coincidental but are actually responding to your new frequency. Opportunities that would have passed you by unnoticed now practically announce themselves because you've become someone who can see them, someone who's vibrating at the level where those opportunities exist. This isn't magic or wishful thinking. This is how energetic resonance works when you shift the signal you're broadcasting. Now let me show you how to structure these 7 days so that your effort actually produces transformation rather than just exhaustion. Most people approach change like they're pouring water onto dry ground, lots of effort, but the water just spreads out and evaporates without creating any meaningful flow or direction. What you need instead is to structure your day like a river, with clear channels that direct your energy toward a specific destination. A river reaches the ocean not because it has more water than a puddle, but because its structure, its banks, its downward slope all work together to create directed flow. The water isn't scattered randomly across the landscape. It's contained, focused, moving with purpose in a defined direction. Your day needs that same intentional structure. It's not about filling every moment with frantic activity or working yourself into exhaustion. It's about creating clear channels for your energy so that everything you do reinforces your new identity rather than diluting it. When you wake up, that first hour sets the direction for your entire day. What you think about, what you focus on, how you speak to yourself in those first moments, that's not random or insignificant. That's establishing the river's direction. If you spend that time scrolling through social media, reacting to other people's agendas, filling your mind with information that has nothing to do with your transformation, you've just directed your river toward dry terrain where it'll dissipate without reaching anything meaningful. But when you use that first hour intentionally, connecting with your vision, reinforcing your new identity, setting clear intention for who you're being today, you've directed your river toward the ocean, toward expansion, toward abundance. And the same principle applies throughout your day. Every decision point is a choice about direction. Every moment of attention is either reinforcing your new identity or feeding your old one. The effort is going to be expended either way. Energy will be used, time will pass. The question is whether that effort is structured to create flow toward your transformation or scattered across activities that maintain your current reality. Drop a comment saying, "My effort flows with purpose," and feel the power of directing your energy instead of diffusing it. There's a time of day that determines the trajectory of everything that follows, and most people completely waste it without even realizing what they're giving up. The morning, those first minutes after you wake up, represents the most powerful portal you have access to every single day. And here's why it's so critical. When you first wake up, your conscious mind is just coming online while your subconscious is still highly active and receptive. You're literally between two worlds, the sleeping state where your subconscious runs freely and the waking state where your conscious patterns take over. In those precious minutes, your mind is incredibly malleable, open to whatever you feed it first. People living in scarcity treat these moments carelessly. They reach for their phone before their feet touch the floor, immediately flooding their fresh consciousness with other people's agendas, problems, news, drama, comparison. They let the outside world determine their internal state before they've even had a chance to consciously set it themselves. Or they wake up and immediately start rehearsing their worries, running through their problems, reinforcing the stress patterns that dominated yesterday. And in doing so, they're essentially programming their day for more of the same, directing their river toward the same dry terrain it's been flowing toward for years. They wonder why every day feels similar, why circumstances never really change, but they're literally choosing their reality in those first unconscious moments. But people living in abundance treat the morning with reverence. They protect those first minutes fiercely because they understand what's at stake. They use that liminal time when their mind is most receptive to consciously establish their identity for the day, to connect with their vision, to set their frequency before anything external has a chance to interfere. They're not reacting, they're creating. They're not absorbing, they're establishing. They're consciously deciding which version of themselves will govern the next 16 hours, and they make that decision from intention rather than allowing habit or circumstance to make it for them. This isn't about complicated morning routines that take 2 hours. This is about claiming conscious authority over your own consciousness before the world makes its claim on you. And here's what's equally critical, but even more overlooked. What you do in those last minutes before sleep determines whether your transformation consolidates or dissolves. Your brain doesn't just shut off when you sleep. It enters a processing state where it sorts through the day's experiences, decides what to strengthen and what to weaken, what to remember and what to discard, what patterns to reinforce and what to let go of. This is where true alchemy occurs, where the day's experiences get integrated into either your old identity or your new one, depending on the state you enter sleep from. Most people sabotage their own progress every single night without realizing it. They spend their day making progress, maintaining their new standard, acting from their emerging identity. They advance 3 steps forward, but then, in those final moments before sleep, they let their guard down. They rehearse their worries. They replay the day's frustrations. They fall asleep, scrolling through content that has nothing to do with their vision. They enter sleep from a state of stress, doubt, or mindless distraction. And while they sleep, their brain processes all of that, strengthening the neural pathways of worry and doubt and old identity, weakening the new patterns they worked all day to establish. They wake up having retreated 4 steps back, wondering why transformation feels so difficult, not realizing they're undoing their progress every night. The night is where you plant seeds in your subconscious that grow while you sleep. If you plant worry, you wake up anxious. If you plant doubt, you wake up uncertain. If you plant conflict, you wake up resistant. But if you consciously plant seeds of your new identity, if you fall asleep reviewing your vision, affirming your transformation, feeling gratitude for who you're becoming, your brain spends those sleeping hours strengthening exactly what you want strengthened. You wake up not having to rebuild what you established yesterday. You wake up with your new identity more deeply rooted, your transformation more solidified, your momentum actually building rather than constantly resetting. These bookends of your day, morning and night, waking and sleeping, are where transformation either takes root or gets eroded. Master these two portals, and the middle of your day becomes exponentially more effective because you're operating from consistent identity. Rather than constantly trying to recover ground you lost while you were unconscious to what was happening. Comment: I master my portals of transformation and claim conscious authority over these powerful moments. Now I want to reveal something that might surprise you about how transformation actually works in the real world. Most people are waiting for the big moment, the dramatic shift, the life-changing opportunity that will finally catapult them into a different reality. They're looking for that one major decision, that perfect breakthrough, that singular event that will change everything. And while big moments do happen, they're never the actual source of transformation. They're the visible result of something far more subtle and powerful that's been happening beneath the surface for much longer than anyone realizes. Your life doesn't change through big decisions. Your life changes through the accumulation of countless micro-decisions, those tiny choices you make every single day that seem insignificant in the moment, but collectively create the energetic pattern that determines your reality. Think about a millionaire, someone who's achieved genuine, lasting wealth. They didn't get there through one brilliant idea or one lucky break, though those may have played a role. They got there through thousands upon thousands of micro-acts, small choices aligned with the identity of someone who creates and maintains wealth. Each individual choice seems almost meaningless, choosing to save rather than spend in a particular moment, deciding to invest time in learning rather than entertainment, selecting conversations that elevate rather than drain, maintaining standards when it would be easier to lower them, acting from abundance consciousness even when circumstances suggested scarcity. None of these individual moments changed their life dramatically, but accumulated over time, these micro-decisions created a pattern, an energetic signature, a way of being that made wealth not just possible, but inevitable. And here's what makes this so powerful for you right now. You don't need to make one perfect choice that changes everything. You need to make better micro-decisions consistently throughout each day, and those micro-decisions will rewire your identity more effectively than any single grand gesture ever could. Every time you catch a scarcity thought and consciously replace it with abundance thinking, that's a micro-decision reprogramming your identity. Every time you choose to speak to yourself with respect rather than criticism, that's a micro-act reinforcing your worth. Every time you invest in yourself, even when it feels uncomfortable, that's a small choice signaling to the universe who you're becoming. Every time you act from your vision rather than your fear, maintain your standard despite inconvenience, choose growth over comfort. These aren't dramatic moments that anyone else would notice, but they're the building blocks of transformation, the individual threads that, woven together, create an entirely new fabric of reality. And there's one specific micro-act that, when performed daily with genuine conviction, accelerates everything we've been talking about. It's a declaration, but not the kind of empty affirmation that most people recite without feeling. This is different. This is you stating your new identity to yourself and the universe with such conviction that it bypasses your conscious doubts and implants directly into your subconscious programming. Close your eyes for a moment if you can, or if you're occupied, just bring your full attention internally. Place your hand on your chest if possible, connecting with your heart center and repeat these words with feeling, with absolute conviction, as if you're not hoping they're true, but confirming what you already know to be fact. I am already abundance. I am already wealth. Money flows toward me naturally and effortlessly. My life reorganizes itself in my favor. Notice I didn't say, I want to be abundant, or I hope to become wealthy. Those phrases come from lack, from the frequency of not having. You're declaring what already is, what's already true, at the level of your new identity, even if your external circumstances haven't fully caught up yet. You're not asking permission from the universe. You're not requesting that maybe possibly, if it's okay, could abundance come your way. You're stating reality from your new operating system, confirming what your upgraded identity already knows to be true. And when you make this declaration daily, especially in those powerful portal moments of morning and night, when your subconscious is most receptive, you're literally reprogramming your identity at the deepest level. This isn't about manipulating reality through positive thinking. This is about aligning your conscious declarations with your emerging identity so completely that the two become inseparable. And from that unified state, your external reality has no choice but to reorganize itself to match. Say it again right now, with even more conviction. I am already abundance. Feel how different that lands compared to I want abundance. Write in the comments, I am already abundance. And notice how even typing it shifts something within you. If you've made it this far, you're not here by accident. Something about this message resonated with a truth you've been searching for. Maybe for years, maybe your entire life. And the fact that you stayed through this entire journey tells me something important about you. You're genuinely ready for transformation. You're not just casually interested. You're committed to becoming someone different, someone who finally steps into the abundance that's been waiting for you. Now, if this content has genuinely served you, if you felt something shift inside you while listening, I'd love for you to subscribe to this channel. I don't create content for entertainment or to waste your time. Everything here is designed to give you real tools, real insights, real pathways to transformation that actually work in the world you live in. And there's so much more coming that builds on what you just experienced. Leave a comment below telling me you made it to the end by simply writing, "This message was meant for me," because it was. And when I see that comment, I'll know you're someone who follows through, someone who doesn't just consume content, but engages with their own transformation actively. That matters more than you might realize. And if you found value here, click that like button. Not for the algorithm, though it helps, but because it's a way of energetically acknowledging to yourself that you received something valuable, that this time was well spent, that you're marking this moment as significant in your journey. Before you go, there's another video right here that takes what we've covered today even deeper. It's the perfect next step for where you are right now. Click it and continue with me there, because your transformation doesn't end here. It's just beginning, and I'll be right there with you for the next phase of this journey.